committed to Creative Mornings Austin.
We believe in the power of community, and we believe in giving a damn.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for being here. This is a great crowd. It's amazing to see a lot of faces I know that are familiar with too, and it's exciting. Also, it's special to be here at Blue Dot. Interior design actually means a lot to me. Modern design means a lot to me too, and it's actually part of my bridge to creativity that I'm going to go through today. And so I'm going to share, some of my journey from both of those sides that Ben talked about. I'm going to offer some perspective from that, and I'm going to share, lots of quotes, lots of stories that I've encountered through this as well. And, through it all, I'll talk about the importance of symmetry through all that. So I'm going to start with logic and creativity. And there's symmetry we need to find there. There's this belief about left brain and right brain thinking that got popularized in the 60s. The scientist named Roger Sperry, did some studies and identified that some of the things, that are logical activate on one side of the brain, while some of our emotional connections connect to another. So that kind of popularized that theory when that first study came out. So let's start about that. If one side of this line is logic and the other side's creativity, my path through it in my life kind of went like that, which I think a lot of us do. And so starting, the very start, one of my first memories that I remember is making comic books. And I remember making one with Godzilla when I was 5 years old. And I also remember building this transformer with my friends. It was actually a Voltron with Legos. And those are both important memories for a few reasons. One is that, they both involved art. And the other is they both involved teamwork. So looking at that in retrospect, I think there was something there. And when I was younger, I was known as this artist. That was my personality trait. That's what defined me. I took this yellow sketch pad everywhere I went. I sketched comic books in class. I sold them in middle school. And to kids, I had my mom print them out on a Xerox machine she had at work. And I did it with my friends, and it was awesome. So, I started to do that a lot until school got harder. So, I'd do this stuff instead of listening to class. And in junior high, I think that's kind of when people noticed my imbalance and my not being symmetrical, because it's easy to spot. And I started not doing so good at school. So I had my teachers and my parents both intervene and be like, you can do this, you're just not focusing at it. So I kind of shifted. And from that, because I don't know symmetry, because I didn't understand it then, and how do you when you're growing up? Because you got to do so many things. And I think we're, this sequential of institutions when we're growing up, and it's hard to keep up. So I pivoted to the logic side. And I love math and science. I think we all love things that naturally come to us, things that give us confidence, and that did too. So I went there. And I think we also follow these steps. There was logical steps for this. So, I knew how to do the next thing. I knew what the next career move was, and I could see my future through it. And so I followed that. I got a degree in physics and mathematics from Austin College, which is in Sherman, Texas. Yeah. Go, yeah. Then after that, I went to get my electrical engineering degree at University of Michigan. So go blue, if there's anybody there too. And then from that, I was up north, so I got recruited at IBM, and I worked there for a while, for 9 years. And somewhere in between, probably like 3 years after, I moved here to Austin, because it was too dang cold in Minnesota, and I needed to move back, and Austin's where I could make that happen. And it wasn't like completely all logical. I did have some quirks. And one that people did notice was I collected Air Jordans. And I didn't just have like a little bit of I had like an obsession with it. So, and I kind of have an obsession with shoes still. But at that time, I had, no lie, I had 76 pair. I had a closet. It was pretty bad. So I still had that. But getting through it, I quickly got to those next steps, and I quickly, got promoted to what I wanted to get promoted to, and then I kind of got to this plateau of like, what do I do next? And it happened quick because I stopped seeing what was next, that path. It kind of changed because, I was getting this inclination to art again. How do I get back into creativity? Like, I know I'm this person naturally. Like, how do I do that? And I saw this post at Apartment Therapy. And it was something I read online at my Google Reader, if you guys remember that. And I realized it was a popular blog. I don't think I quite realized like how popular it was or how big it was. And so I like naively responded to it without much experience. But they said, hey, we just want somebody who can write about interior design, but also can talk about, tech that's coming into interior design space, because that evolution was happening. You started seeing, some of the smart home things and some of the app things. And so I submitted it, and I got in. So I went from doing this on the weekends, like, I'd write 3 posts a week, which is actually a lot. It takes a lot of time. And my first conversation was with Leela Sid, who's an amazing photographer, an amazing artist. You should look her up. And that conversation, she described to me how to use a camera, because I take some of these pictures with my posts too. And it made a lot of sense. I connected that like solving a math problem. Like, I just knew the variables of the exposure triangle right away, and I was like, I got this. And I was excited about it. So I went to an interiors tour on Houston that weekend. Like, no lie, I was like, I gotta shoot now, because I felt empowered from it. And I did, and it was awesome. It was like getting back in touch with that creative side, and I was making what I'd call like, instant art, where before like it became too much of a process. So as I started shooting for Apartment Therapy, I met lots of amazing people, and here in Austin, and I loved it. People saw it. People could see it from, that I worked with at IBM that didn't know that side of me before. And, there'd be these jokes around like, hey, you're going to quit your job and be a photographer? And I was seriously thinking about it, because I did love it. And it was storytelling, it was meeting people, and it was art. And so I started to look at that more. And when you're shooting at home, there's lots you do in this like 2-hour shoot. And I had intimate conversations with lots of people to do it. Because I'm there, they're opening up their home to me, which is an intimate space. And so I opened up to them about what I was considering and what I was doing. This particular home tour was with Amy Lynch. And, I remember asking her and telling her like, hey, I'm thinking about quitting my job, but I'm debating it because of all this studying I did. I went to school for this. I have this career. I have this job, this noble profession that people look up to. And I asked her, what gives me the right to give that up for what seemed like this other pursuit? And I still remember like point blank. She said, what gives you the right? Your talent does. And I think she could say your passion does too. Those aren't things we pick. Those aren't things that, you can teach your kids or you can grow up to do, but there's things that happen to us. And so when that resonated with me and connected to me, I changed, and I quit my job within 3 months of that conversation. So there's a balance in selflessness and self that you get with symmetry too. And it's important to find that. Just like I could see the steps on the logical side, people often ask, like entrepreneurs that have connected, like how did you take a career shift? And I say on the other side of it, those steps are still there. You just got to trust that they're there because you can't quite see them. And if you're moving along this and the steps just start appearing, sometimes they seem magically appearing, then you're probably on the right track. Because that happened to me. I started this Kickstarter for this magazine, and that was little young me. And it connected to the city because this city is amazing. And it connected me through all the people I met, like most of those people I did home tours with, and I met, and I formed this team, and we built this thing together. And, through that slowly, I started moving from having a magazine to making other magazines to having a business to doing great interviews and employees and interns becoming employees, and it was awesome. But because that pursuit was so exciting, I dove in because, again, I didn't have that balance of symmetry yet. And so this happens too, where you kind of get caught up. You get selfish. You get so confident in risks that you want to take them, and sometimes you take too many. And so I lost something with that. I realized I did, and I lost somebody I loved. I lost it because I was too passionate about the wrong things. And I think sometimes we can do that easily too, because of this chase and this pursuit. And it's not like, this is a common story that's happened. If I read How I Built This podcast, or I listen to How I Built This podcast, and it's a really great one. But, these sacrifices happen. And a lot of these people tell stories of things they've had where, they've departed from long relationships. And, whether you get, for me, it was like getting sucked into my own stuff. Or if it's happening because you have late blooming confidence, or if it's happening because, you're finding out who you are, or you're in a bad relationship, like those things happen. And, I'm not here to judge any of that, but we should listen to it because it's not symmetry. So there's symmetry to find also in confidence and humility. And that's another exploration I want to go through. And so when that divorce happened to me, and you saw these scatterings, you could look at that as my friends moving away from me, but it was me moving away from them because I had shame. And that's a lot to say, and it's a lot to stack up, and you kind of just retreat and run away. And that sometimes is a tendency. So I did that, and I needed an escape. And so I planned this trip to Australia end of last year, and I was there for about 17 days, and it's just what I needed. I found peace, I reset, I found connection to creativity again, and I found this symmetry, I think, there too. And it was special. I went through, moments of solitude. Like I didn't have an itinerary intentionally because I wanted to explore. And through that solitude, some things happen. Sometimes you get depressed through it, and there was a few days where I did. But you emerge on the other side of that too. There's a CreativeMornings talk last year that I went to, and he was telling me the story afterward too about how this retreat he took, the silent retreat. And I didn't necessarily take a silent retreat in Australia, but I was isolated. And he described it to me like a river. Like your thoughts are flowing through you like a river. And throughout our day, we often get up to go tend to this or tend to that, and then you get back in and you're just back to those first thoughts again. But when you're there in isolation for a while and you just sit there and you see what comes down the river, down the line, and you start seeing thoughts that either are subconscious or memories, and sometimes they're frightening, but it's important to encounter them because they're telling. And so this was like that for me. I started, seeing patterns, seeing things because I got out of that rhythm of routine for a while, and I think that's important for everybody to do. But through that routine, I'm a positive person, I'm optimist, and I remember going to this exhibit. It was an MC Escher exhibit with Nindo as architect, and talk about symmetry. This thing's like symmetry on symmetry, both in the art and in the architecture they made for it. And that moved me a lot. That changed me. I went from feeling down to feeling like, man, I can't wait to make something else. And so that was a good moment. And this quote's from Brené Brown that I think is special. Connection is why we're here. It's what gives meaning to our lives. And I think seeing that connection meant a lot to me. I started talking to strangers in Australia, which is also a great thing about it because you can speak that language and it's the other side of the world, and that's awesome. But it was so good. Going to dinner, going to drinks, like going out, whatever, everyone was open, and it felt like they needed to hear my conversations and I needed to hear theirs. And when you open yourselves up to that and when you like allow that to happen, like it's magical. So there's a symmetry in passion and openness as well. And, through that, we have to put things out there. So there's, I know when we're releasing things and, we can get caught up in startup mentality and we can try to, put up personas and like predict what our users want and like come up with all these calculations, and there's a tendency to get it exactly right before you put it out. But that's not symmetrical either. What's symmetrical is being open, realizing that you might be wrong on some things, realizing that the audience might want to do stuff with some of this that's right too. And so you need to let your products be open too, have flexibility in them and let people make them what they can make them. And so I believe in the art of compromise now. Compromise in design is sometimes used as a dirty word, but it's actually beautiful. When you're compromising, it's collaborative. When you're compromising, you're not fully saying this is my idea. You're including everybody into it, and you're participating together, and I think that's special, and that's awesome. There's this quote here from Elizabeth Gilbert, and this touches on a point too, where she's saying, why should I go through all the trouble to make something if the outcome might be nothing? And the answer will usually come with the trickster grin, because it's fun, isn't it? And it should be fun. I think we get caught up in this creativity is magic. Creativity requires isolation. Creativity requires struggle. And she goes through that in this book, Big Magic, which I think is a great read. And it's more than that. It should be fun. That's why we're here. And I think we should explore that. There's also a good quote that this reminds me of, which is another great speech. I love watching speeches and quotes. But Neil Gaiman does this great speech as a commencement speech. And he's saying the best advice he never took came from Stephen King when he was writing his comic book Sandman. And Stephen King complimented him, said, "This is great, this is amazing." And he said, "You know what? You should enjoy this." And he said he didn't. He worried about the next deadline, worried about the next problem, and trying to be creative again and let his own success hinder, stymie what the next success would be. And we need to move past that too. We should enjoy it. We should enjoy that we can create and not worry that, what we make next might not be as good as the other thing. It's all fun. It should all be fun. So going to this exploration here, this one's on curiosity and fear, which is another symmetry that I think we all, need to explore. And so for this one, I'm going to talk about, one of my favorite movies is Midnight in Paris. I think it's beautifully shot, and I think it's beautifully done. And it's one of my favorite films because it captures that essence that Elizabeth Gilbert kind of calls bullshit on in Big Magic. She's kind of saying this isn't don't make it a struggle, make it fun. Don't make creativity negative, make it positive, and make this a happy place. And I think in this film you kind of see this. Yes, they're loving life. But there's also this parallel of them not realizing how magical the moment they're living in today really is. I mean, this is a scene from the film. It's Picasso, Salvador Dali, Zelda Fitzgerald, all these people. And they're still reminiscing man, this golden age over there, everybody reminisces about being somewhere else, rather than thinking about where they are right now. And so, talking back to Austin, where we live now is amazing. This city is amazing. Everybody in this crowd is amazing, and there's magic, and there's this connection there, and openness. And that's special too. So I like to think about that and contrast it with, what if where we are right now is where we're supposed to be? What if this is the universe that I'm born in, and this is the universe I'm supposed to be a part of? What if we are in our golden age now, and why do we talk about being a part of this other one? Why don't we just enjoy where we are right now? We have this capacity to connect with technology, with people. We have this capacity to pursue our own passions, Because everyone's listening. And we have this capacity to do so many things with whatever we dream of. I saw this quote, I heard this quote this week, and it was special and it fit right in here. And I believe it too. It's from the book called The Alchemist. And when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you achieve it. And I think speaking about the universe, speaking about this connection and talking about it and voicing it in that way is special. I believe if you listen today, you'll see that the universe, if you open your eyes up to it, this is a blend of all these things that we call art. It's not something accessible only to the logical side of the brain. It's not accessible only to the emotional side of the brain. It's access to all of us. And the answer, it might be in our mistakes. It might be in our risks. It might be in our certainties and our uncertainties. It might be in our doubts. And it might be in our experiences. But most importantly, I think, the answer is in this openness and this surrender. So say hi to everyone you're sitting next to. Listen to everybody that's here that you can talk to. Because maybe each of us together is exactly where we need to be. Maybe each of us together is exactly who we need to hear today. And maybe the symmetry of all of us is exactly how we make our own art.